What's going on, everybody? We are going to react to the big news that leading receiver Xavier Restrepo is going to be out against Texas A&M. We will find out more in terms of how long he will be out, but he won't play against the Aggies. David, just your initial reaction to him. Certainly, this is a big one because he's led the Hurricanes in receiving the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, tough news for the Hurricanes going into this big game against Texas A&M, where you're going to need, of course, all your best players to show up and make plays. Being down Xavier Restrepo, of course, it's a big deal. Like you were saying, he's the leading receiver. He's also Tyler Van Dyke's security blanket in situational football. So um, obviously, some guys are going to have to step up. I'm sure we'll get into that, but definitely tough news going into Miami's big game on Saturday.
Especially, David, we've talked so much about the wide receivers in terms of what we've seen from the passing game with the other guys. And certainly they would like to have Restrepo in this one based on how the first 2 weeks have gone. Again, Restrepo goes for 100 yards, first 100-yard game in the opener there, follows it up 72 yards. He actually enters this week, just 2 weeks into play here, fourth in the ACC, tied for fourth in receptions and tied for fourth in receiving yards. So his production has been there. It's very disappointing. He's a guy on punt return. He was our primary punt returner. I noticed last week early on that he was replaced on the kick return unit. And, this is something that Coach Cristobal's mentioned that he's dealt with an injury. He touched on it last game. His snaps were about half of what the other leading receivers had in that last game. So it's something that he's certainly been dealing with. And, just moving forward with punt return, Tyreek Stevenson handled the duties there. Brashard Smith becomes the slot guy. We did get a chance to see him last game make some plays. David, your thoughts on Brashard? He's been a very interesting guy for a lot of fans, very curious about him. We've talked about him a ton at the recruiting level before he got here. But your thoughts on Brashard? Is he ready? This is it. Is he ready to shine in a big game like this?
I mean, I don't know. We'll find out. I think it was encouraging that he did step up and made the plays that came his way against Southern Miss. I believe he caught all four of his targets in that game for 53 yards. So that was encouraging. I do feel like um, he did take a step during fall camp in terms of improving his consistency. I feel like prior to this fall camp, he was a guy that would have some drop issues during the portions of practice that we could watch. I do feel like he cleaned that up some during fall camp. And, following I forget if it was the first or second scrimmage, he was a guy that Mario Cristobal went out of his way to praise for the way he had developed. And, in this Josh Gaddis system before this injury, he was a guy that they were utilizing his speed on some end arounds, which I think was a good way to get the ball in his hands as well. He's a guy that does have good speed. He clocked a 4.4 on the lasers at the high school level. So he does have some dynamic ability. But I think the question he still has to answer, if we're being honest, is this is going to be a big stage. This is going to be the craziest environment you've ever played in. And how do you respond to that big moment? We won't really know that until the ball kicks off.
And with Xavier, you touched on, just his connection with Tyler Van Dyke. We've certainly have to express that quite a bit since their arrivals, but not only that, Xavier's making plays and it felt like we've been waiting for the other receivers to step up. We've seen it in flashes this season, but just not at the level where, that his consistency of production has been, through these first 2 weeks. David, the with him out not out there, not regardless of the other guys, but what does he bring into the offense that, this in terms of this reliability, his
Yeah,
overall skill set that they're just not going to have on the field there on Saturday?
I think it's a confidence factor, and that matters in college football. We talk about momentum being so important in college football. I think another word for momentum is confidence. And Xavier Restrepo's the guy in third and long situations that Tyler Van Dyke is going to look to get the ball to. That's a big deal when you lose that type of guy. So, um, he was a guy that Tyler Van Dyke trusted. I think Tyler is still building trust with the other receivers, quite frankly, learning who he can trust in different situations. And again, that's a big deal when you play in a hostile environment against a ultra talented defense. Everything matters in these type of games. And so when you start having to work your way down the depth chart and guys get bigger roles, that's a big deal. I'm curious, Chris, for your thoughts. I think Brashard Smith is the easy guy to point to. Like, yeah, of course, his role is going to step up in the slot. Are there other guys that you feel like could get a handful of snaps in the slot to maybe, I don't know, lack of a better term, moneyball the slot receiver production there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't think you always have to go with that 5'9", 5'10" guy in the slot. I think if they want just to mix it up, I think they could put Michael Redding the third in there on some
Agreed.
possession type things. I think they can kick a tight end out there, and Will Mallory, Elijah Arroyo, if you want them both on the field, I think they could slide out to that slot spot. It doesn't have to be this automatic 5'10" guy, just kind of
Yes.
running quick routes. I think, at the high school level, I've seen Frank Latson kind of move inside just so he can kind of get some different looks in terms of, going against a secondary. I think you can move different guys in there. Now, David, how often have these guys actually been working there? It is different, during practices. Just moving a guy into the slot isn't as easy as it seems. But I think that they just have to provide different looks. We've seen it with running back. We've seen, last game I saw Henry Parrish out
Yeah.
wide, a far running back, just out wide as a wide receiver. So they can put a slot guy there. They like Parrish's ability to catch the ball. Jalen Knighton has made catches over his career. He's
Yep.
going to be back. Jacoby George is a guy that's back from suspension. Now we'll see if he can actually jump frog some other guys who have been out there the first 2 weeks. But Jacoby's a guy too. So I don't think it's necessarily it has to only be Brashard, and especially if
Agreed.
Brashard's not getting going or if there's anything, if he's not getting the releases he needs, I think Miami's got to move things around and get guys in there. And I think they've just has to look at this as a one game, get through the game, and then deal with it moving forward. They've got practice time. They've got a Middle Tennessee game. They've got practice time, a bye week before they get ready for North Carolina. So they've got time to work on things, to determine different things. But I just think for this game, you've got to use everybody, at
Yeah.
different positions, running back, tight end, everybody involved.
I think the guy you mentioned that I think makes the most sense beyond Brashard is Michael Redding. And you look at his snaps this season, he's played 23 snaps out of the slot so far through these first two games. And he is a guy that teammates and coaches have praised for knowing the playbook. So he has the ability to play different receiver spots and know what his role is. I'm intrigued by that look, having Redding in the slot. Maybe then you go Keyshawn and Frank on the outside. Those are some big receivers. And it does seem like, to the point of Tyler is still building trust with the receivers or et cetera, et cetera. It does seem like, if I was going to pick which receiver he trusts second most so far through these first two games, I would probably pick Mike Redding. So I would put him there in the slot some along with Brashard Smith. Henry Parrish and Knighton, you mentioned them. They both have between 25 to 40 snaps in the slot in their careers. So they've done it. Jacoby George, I'm kind of wait and see on that one. Coming off a suspension, how much are they really going to throw him out there in this type of game? And quite frankly, in this offense, I don't think we've necessarily seen him work too much in the slot. He's kind of been focused more on the outside, but he does have some skills to make plays as a slot receiver. But yeah, I mean, I think too, it needs to be said that this is an opportunity for Josh Gaddis to show us what he's got because this only ramps up. Like, I think this was a big key to the game before this Restrepo injury happened, but he's going to have to show some creativity. He's going to have some play designs where he schemes up a guy that's wide open in situations. I think that only gets amplified now that you kind of are missing your go-to receiver in Xavier Restrepo.
And Mike Redding comes into the game with the leading receiver at this point, the 76 yards, leads the team now with Restrepo out on 5 catches and does have a touchdown. David, appreciate you taking the time to do this. Plenty more information on InsideTheU.com, full breakdowns as we get more into it, but definitely stay locked into the channel as well. All right, David, take care.
Take care.